The rocky path crumbled under my boots as the confession I had buried for years finally exploded from my lips. "James, I'm in love with you," I said, my voice cracking against the wind whipping through the Colorado Rockies. James stopped dead in his tracks, his backpack slipping slightly off one shoulder as he turned to face me. The sun was high overhead, casting sharp shadows on his familiar face, the same face I had memorized since our college days at the University of Colorado in Boulder. His blue eyes widened, not with the warmth I had secretly hoped for, but with pure shock. "What did you just say, Alex?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, but the accusation in it hit me like a gust of mountain air. I swallowed hard, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was it. The moment I had rehearsed in my head 1,000 times during our weekend hikes. The ones where we would laugh about old times, share beers by the campfire, and talk about everything except the one thing eating me alive. I said, "I love you, man. Not like a brother. Not like a best friend. I'm in love with you, James. Have been for years." The words hung there, heavy and raw, as the pine trees swayed around us and a distant eagle cried out. He laughed at first, a short, nervous bark that echoed off the cliffs. "Come on, Alex. This is some kind of joke, right? April Fools or something. We're on a hike, not in a damn soap opera." But when he saw my face, the smile faded. His expression shifted to something darker, confusion, maybe anger. "You're serious. You're actually serious." We stood there for what felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes. The trail to Long's Peak had been our tradition since we graduated 5 years ago, a way to escape the grind of Denver life. I worked as a graphic designer, pouring my soul into logos and ads for clients who had no idea about the turmoil inside me. James was a high school football coach, the all-American guy with the easy smile and a string of girlfriends over the years that never seemed to stick. We had been inseparable since freshman year when we were assigned as roommates. He knew everything about me, or so he thought. My fear of heights? Check. My terrible cooking? Check. But the fact that I was gay and madly in love with him, that was the secret I had guarded like the summit itself. "James, please," I pleaded, stepping closer, but he backed away, his hiking boots scraping against the loose gravel. "Don't do this. Don't make it weird. We've been through everything together. My dad's heart attack, your breakup with Sarah last year. This can't be real." His voice rose, echoing my own internal storm. I could see the panic setting in, the way his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Are you telling me all those nights we crashed on each other's couches, all those talks about girls, it was all a lie?" "It wasn't a lie," I shot back, the frustration building. "I never lied about who I was to you. I couldn't tell you this part. The world out there, my family back in Texas, they don't get it. My dad still thinks being gay is a choice or a sin or whatever his church preaches. But you, James, you're the one person who made me feel seen. And now I've ruined it." He turned away, staring out at the vast expanse of jagged peaks and valleys below, the vibrant greens and grays of the Rocky Mountains stretching endlessly. "Ruined it? Yeah, Alex, you kind of did. I don't know what to think. I need space. Let's just get off this mountain before we say something we'll regret." Without another word, he started down the trail, his pace quick and determined, leaving me to follow in silence. The descent was a blur of regret and relief. Every step reminded me of the freedom in finally saying it, but also the fear of losing the one constant in my life. By the time we reached the trailhead parking lot, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in fiery oranges that matched the turmoil in my chest. James tossed his gear into his truck without looking at me. "I'll see you around, Alex. Or I don't know." He drove off, leaving me standing there alone with the echo of my words and the weight of what I had done. Back in my Denver apartment that night, the silence was deafening. I paced the small living room, replaying the moment over and over. Had I really expected him to say it back? Of course not. James was straight as they came, or at least that is what I had always told myself to keep the hope at bay. But the look in his eyes was not just shock, it was betrayal. Like I had been hiding a part of myself that changed how he saw our entire friendship. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, the cold bottle a small comfort, and sank onto the couch. Flashes of our past flooded in. Late-night study sessions where he would help me with math while I doodled designs. The road trip to California after graduation where we sang along to bad radio. The way he had always had my back. No questions asked. Now it all felt tainted. My phone buzzed. A text from my mom in Houston. "How was the hike with James? Tell him hi from us." I stared at the screen, the guilt twisting deeper. My parents, devout Baptists, had raised me with Sunday school lessons that made me question everything about myself from the moment I realized I was different. Coming out to them was a conversation I had avoided for a decade. And now, with James pulling away, the isolation hit harder than the altitude on that peak. I did not sleep much that night. The next morning, I dragged myself to my home office, trying to focus on a deadline for a client logo. But my mind kept drifting to James. Was he at the high school field, coaching his team, pretending everything was normal? Or was he as messed up as I was? I picked up my phone a dozen times, typing messages only to delete them. Sorry, did not cut it. I did not mean to was a lie. The truth was out, and there was no taking it back. By afternoon, I could not take it anymore. I called my old college friend, Marcus, the only other gay guy I knew from our circle. He had come out sophomore year and faced his own battles. "Dude, you finally did it?" he said after I spilled everything. His voice was calm, supportive in a way James could not be right now. "Good for you, Alex. But yeah, the reaction sucks. Give him time. Not everyone is ready to handle that kind of truth bomb on a hike." Time. That is what James asked for. But as the days dragged on with no word from him, the doubt crept in. Had I lost my best friend forever? The thought made the apartment feel smaller, the city outside louder with its indifferent hum. I stared out the window at the distant mountains, the same ones that had witnessed my moment of courage or stupidity. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a storm that would test not only our friendship, but everything I thought I knew about myself and the world around me. The following week, the silence from James became unbearable. I threw myself into work, designing a new campaign for a local brewery, but every time I opened my sketchbook, the lines blurred into memories of him laughing on the trail. My phone stayed quiet. No Friday night texts asking if I wanted to grab wings at our usual spot. No Saturday morning calls about the Broncos game. It was as if the mountain had swallowed our entire history. On Wednesday, I finally broke. I drove to the high school where James coached, parking across the street like some kind of stalker. Through the chain-link fence, I watched him run drills with the varsity team, whistle around his neck, voice booming encouragement the way it always had. He looked the same, tall, broad-shouldered, sun-bleached hair, but something in his posture seemed tighter, guarded. When practice ended, he spotted my car. For a second, our eyes locked. Then he turned and walked the other way. That night, Marcus dragged me to a quiet bar in Capitol Hill, the kind with dim lights and regulars who minded their own business. Over 2 IPAs, I laid it all out again. "He thinks I lied to him for 10 years, I said, peeling the label off the bottle. Marcus shook his head. "Give a guy credit. He is processing. Straight dudes do not get handed a best friend bombshell every day." He paused, then added gently, "But you cannot keep living in the closet for him, Alex. Your family still does not know either." The mention of my parents sent ice through my veins. My mom had been calling daily, fishing for details about James like she always did. She loved him like a second son. How was I supposed to tell her the truth without shattering the perfect picture she had built? Thursday morning, my phone finally rang. "James." My thumb hovered over the green button for 3 rings before I answered. "Hey." His voice was flat, careful. "Can we talk?" "Not on the phone." We agreed to meet at Washington Park that evening, neutral ground near his apartment. I arrived early, sitting on a bench under the elms, watching joggers and dog walkers. When James showed up, he looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. He sat at the far end of the bench, leaving space between us like an invisible wall. "I've been thinking nonstop," he started, staring at his hands. "About us. About everything. And I am angry, Alex. Not because you are gay, I do not care about that, but because you carried this alone for so long. We told each other everything, or I thought we did." The words stung, but I forced myself to listen. I was scared, I admitted. Scared you would look at me the way my dad looks at anyone different. Scared I would lose the only person who ever made me feel normal. He rubbed his face. I need time to figure out what this means for me. For us. I cannot just flip a switch and pretend it is all the same. We sat in silence until the street lights flickered on. Before he left, he squeezed my shoulder once, the first physical contact since the mountain. It was small, but it was something. The next day, I booked a flight to Houston. It was time. My parents deserved the truth, even if I was terrified. The plane ride felt like a countdown. When I landed, my mom hugged me at baggage claim, smelling like vanilla and home. Dad shook my hand the way he always did, firm and distant. Over pot roast that night, I could not hold it anymore. Mom, Dad, I am gay. The silence that followed was worse than any argument. Mom's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Dad's face turned red. We will talk about this later, he said quietly, but the disappointment in his voice cut deeper than any shout. That night, I lay in my childhood bed staring at the same glow-in-the-dark stars I had stuck on the ceiling at 13, wondering if I had just traded one family for another. Back in Denver the following Monday, James texted a single line, "Coffee tomorrow." It was not forgiveness, but it was a door cracking open. I met him at our favorite cafe on 16th Street Mall. He looked more like himself, jeans, Broncos hoodie, easy smile almost returning. "I talked to my sister," he said after the barista left. "She thinks I'm an idiot for freezing up. Said I should be honored you trusted me that much." He laughed softly, the sound I'd missed so badly. Maybe she's right. We did not solve anything that day, but we talked. About the hike. About my parents' reaction. About how he had started questioning his own past relationships, wondering if he had missed signs. No declarations, no promises, just two guys trying to find solid ground again. When we parted, he pulled me into a quick, awkward hug. "We're not done, Alex. Whatever this is, we will figure it out." For the first time in weeks, the knot in my chest loosened. But I knew the road ahead was long. Work deadlines piled up. My mom left voicemails I could not bring myself to answer, and James still kept a careful distance. Yet something had shifted. The confession that nearly broke us was slowly, carefully, becoming the foundation for whatever came next. Winter arrived early in Denver, blanketing the city in a thin layer of snow that matched the chill still lingering between James and me. We had settled into a fragile routine, texting memes, grabbing lunch when our schedules aligned, but the easy camaraderie of before was gone, replaced by careful politeness. Every conversation felt like walking a new trail with unmarked turns. At the office, my boss noticed. "You okay, Alex? Designs are good, but you look like you have not slept." I brushed it off, but the truth was I had not. Nights were filled with replaying the hike, my parents' stunned faces, and the slow realization that coming out had not magically fixed anything. It had only opened new wounds. 2 weeks before Christmas, my sister Emily called from Houston. "Mom cried again last night. Dad is pretending nothing happened, but he canceled the church potluck. You need to come home for the holidays, Alex. Fix this." The guilt hit like an avalanche. I booked a ticket for the 23rd, telling myself it was the right thing. James offered to drive me to the airport. On the way, he kept the radio low, classic rock we both loved. "You nervous?" he asked. I nodded, terrified. What if they never accept it? He glanced over, eyes soft in the dashboard light. Then they miss out on knowing the real you. And that would be their loss. The simple kindness in his voice cracked something open. For the first time since the mountain, I felt seen again. Not as the guy who dropped a bomb, but as Alex. Houston was humid even in December. Mom met me at the door with red eyes and a forced smile. Dinner was quiet until Dad cleared his throat. "We have been praying on this, son. We love you, but we do not understand." The words were not angry, but they were not warm either. Emily squeezed my hand under the table. Later that night, Mom sat on the edge of my bed like she had when I was 10. "I just want you happy. Is James part of this?" I told her the truth about the confession. She listened without interrupting, then hugged me tight. "Give us time too." Christmas morning brought small miracles. Dad handed me a new sketchbook instead of the usual sermon. "Draw whatever makes you happy," he said gruffly. It was not acceptance, but it was a start. On the flight home, I felt lighter, like I had dropped a backpack I had carried for years. Back in Denver, James picked me up from the airport. Snow was falling again. Over late-night tacos, he listened as I recounted the trip. When I finished, he set his fork down. I have been doing some thinking, too. Went to a counselor at the school. Turns out I have been avoiding a lot of feelings, not just about you, but about myself. I do not know what label fits, but I know I miss you, the real you. And I want to see where this goes if you still do. My heart stuttered. You mean? He smiled, tentative but real. I mean, I am open. Scared as hell, but open. We did not kiss. We did not need to. The promise in his eyes was enough. The new year brought fresh challenges. My parents started asking tentative questions over weekly calls. James's team made playoffs, and I attended every home game, sitting in the stands like always, but now with a different kind of pride. At work, I pitched a pro-LGBTQ campaign that got approved, my first open step toward using my art for something personal. Yet tension simmered. James's ex-girlfriend Sarah reached out, confused why he had suddenly gone quiet on dating apps. He told her the truth, and she reacted better than expected, but the rumor mill at his school started turning. A parent complained about inappropriate influences. James came over one night looking drained. I'm not ashamed, he said, but I hate that it affects the kids. We stayed up talking until dawn, mapping out how to face the world together. Spring thawed the last snow. One Saturday, we hiked a gentler trail in Golden Gate Canyon. Same boots, same backpacks, but everything different. Halfway up, James stopped, turned to me under the budding aspens. Thank you for being brave first, he said quietly. It gave me permission to be brave, too. In that moment, with sunlight filtering through new leaves, I knew the confession that had nearly destroyed us was becoming the story that saved us both. Summer heat settled over Denver like a heavy blanket, turning our weekend hikes into early morning escapes. James and I had fallen into a rhythm that felt both brand new and comfortingly familiar. We held hands in the car, but kept things private around his players. My parents had progressed from cautious questions to sending articles about loving your child unconditionally. Progress was slow, but it was progress. Then came the misunderstanding that nearly undid everything. I had started volunteering at a local LGBTQ youth center, teaching graphic design to teens who reminded me of my younger self. One evening after a workshop, a kid named Tyler asked for extra help. We grabbed coffee afterward, strictly professional. But someone from James's school saw us and snapped a photo. The next day, the picture circulated in the coaching staff group chat with a caption, "Alex moving on already?" James showed up at my apartment unannounced, jaw tight. Who is he? The hurt in his voice cut deep. I explained, but the seed of doubt had been planted. After everything I risked, my job, my reputation, you were having coffee with some college kid? He paced my living room, the same room where I had once confessed on the mountain. I thought we were past secrets. The argument escalated fast. I accused him of not trusting me after all the work we had done. He accused me of not understanding how much he had sacrificed. Words flew that we cannot take back. He left, slamming the door, and I sat on the floor wondering if honesty had only traded one kind of pain for another. Marcus called the next day. You two need to talk like adults, not like scared teenagers. He was right. I drove to James's apartment with coffee and apology written all over my face. He opened the door, looking as wrecked as I felt. We sat on his couch, the same couch where we had watched 100 games, and I laid everything out again. Tyler was a student. Nothing more. James listened, then pulled me into a hug that lasted minutes. I'm sorry. This is new territory for me. Jealousy is new territory. That conversation opened floodgates. We started couples counseling, not because we were broken, but because we wanted to build something strong. The therapist helped us name fears, mine of abandonment, his of losing the straight identity he had worn like armor. We learned to check in instead of assume. Meanwhile, my family visited Denver for the first time in years. Mom hugged James like he was already part of the family. Dad shook his hand a little longer than usual and even asked about the football season. Over dinner at a downtown steakhouse, Dad cleared his throat. We are proud of you, son. Both of you. It was not perfect, but it was enough to make me tear up in the bathroom later. Work took an exciting turn. My pro-LGBTQ campaign won a regional award, and a national magazine wanted to interview me. The journalist asked how I balanced personal and professional life. I mentioned James without naming him, calling him my partner in every sense. Seeing it in print made everything feel real. James's team won the state championship that fall. At the celebration, he pulled me aside in the parking lot under stadium lights. "I want you there for everything. The wins, the losses, the messy middle." Then he kissed me, quick and sure, right there where anyone could see. It was not a grand gesture, but it was ours. Yet life kept testing us. A distant cousin on my dad's side posted hateful comments on social media after seeing the article. James's principal called him in for a conversation about optics. We faced each storm together, learning that love was not the absence of conflict, but the decision to keep choosing each other through it. One crisp October weekend, we returned to Long's Peak. Not to the same trail, but a different route that felt symbolic. At the summit, we sat side by side, wind whipping around us like the day everything changed. James took my hand. Best decision I ever made was listening instead of running. I smiled, the mountains stretching out below us like possibilities. The journey was far from over, but for the first time I was not walking alone. The holidays brought both joy and a final test. My family hosted Christmas in Houston, insisting James come. The house smelled of cinnamon and pine, but tension lingered beneath the surface. My uncle made a thinly veiled comment at dinner about lifestyle choices. James's hand found mine under the table, steady and warm. Later, Dad pulled me aside. "I'm still learning, son, but I see how happy you are. That is enough for now." It was the closest he had ever come to full acceptance. Back in Denver, the new year started with a job offer I could not refuse, a senior designer position in San Francisco. The salary was life-changing, the creative freedom a dream. But it meant leaving James, our routines, the mountains that had become our sanctuary. We talked for hours on my couch. "I cannot ask you to give up your team, your life here," I said. James stared at the floor. "And I cannot ask you to stay and resent me later." The decision tore at us. For 2 weeks we barely spoke, each lost in our own fear of losing the other. I almost turned the job down. James almost asked me to. But love required sacrifice, not just romance. We agreed I would go for 6 months, test the waters. Long distance was not ideal, but it was honest. The night before my flight, we hiked our favorite easy trail one last time. Snow dusted the pines. At the overlook, James stopped. "This does not change us," he said, voice thick. "Distance cannot undo what the mountain started." We held each other until the cold forced us back. At the airport, he kissed me goodbye in front of everyone. No hiding, no shame. "Call me when you land." San Francisco was exciting and lonely. New colleagues, new city lights, but every sunset reminded me of Colorado peaks. We video called every night, sharing small victories and bigger fears. James's team made playoffs again. I landed my first major campaign, but the miles stretched between us like an invisible barrier. Then came the betrayal I never saw coming. A well-meaning coworker in San Francisco posted a group photo on social media, tagging me. James saw it and noticed how close I stood to a friendly colleague named Ryan. Old insecurities flared. James's texts grew short. When I called, he admitted, "I keep thinking, what if you meet someone there who understands your world better than I do?" The misunderstandings snowballed into our first real fight over distance. I flew back for a long weekend, determined to fix it. We met at Washington Park, where our first post-confession talk had happened. This time I spoke first. "There is no one else. There never will be. You're my home, James." He listened, then shared his own terror of being left behind. We cried, laughed, and chose each other again. That night we made a pact. No more assumptions. We would visit monthly, no matter the cost. Spring in San Francisco brought clarity. I realized the job was amazing, but my heart was in Denver. James had been promoted to head coach. We were both growing, but separately we were only half ourselves. On a video call in May, I told him, "I am coming home." His smile through the screen was brighter than any California sun. The day I returned, we drove straight to the mountains. Not hiking this time, just sitting in his truck at the trailhead, windows down, listening to the wind. "We made it," he said quietly. The road had been longer and harder than either of us imagined, but every scar had taught us something priceless. Love was not the easy path. It was the one we chose to keep walking together. Summer returned to the Rockies with wildflowers painting the meadows in every color imaginable. James and I stood on the same overlook where everything had begun 2 years earlier. The wind still howled, but this time our hands were linked without fear. I had turned down the San Francisco extension and taken a local freelance role that let me work from home. James's team had won back-to-back championships, and the school board had publicly supported his relationship after a parent petition in our favor. My parents had flown out for the championship game. Dad, wearing a rainbow pin Mom had bought him. Small steps, but real ones. We had learned that growth was not linear. There were still tough days. Family gatherings where old uncles stayed silent. School events where James fielded awkward questions. Nights when doubt whispered old lies. But we faced them together, talking instead of retreating, choosing understanding over anger. Marcus had become like a brother, hosting monthly dinners where we all shared stories of love and resilience. The youth center where I volunteered now had a full design program named after our journey, something I never could have imagined on that fateful hike. One crisp Saturday, we packed the same backpacks and set out for Long's Peak again. This time the climb felt lighter, every switchback a reminder of how far we had come. At the summit, we sat shoulder to shoulder, the world spread below us in breathtaking clarity. James pulled a small box from his pack. Inside was a simple silver band engraved with coordinates of the exact spot where I had first confessed. "Not an engagement, if you are not ready," he said, voice steady. "Just a promise that whatever comes next, we face it side by side." I slipped the ring on and kissed him under that endless Colorado sky. Life continued its beautiful, complicated rhythm. We bought a small house in the suburbs with a view of the foothills. Weekends were for hiking or hosting friends. Holidays alternated between Denver and Houston, each visit easier than the last. My dad even asked James for football advice one Thanksgiving. Progress neither of us had dared hope for. Looking back, that single moment on the mountain had not destroyed us. It had stripped away the masks, forced us to see each other and ourselves clearly. The internal conflicts, the family pressures, the societal stares, they had all been part of the journey towards something stronger. We were no longer the scared college roommates or the shocked hikers. We were two men who had chosen honesty, growth, and each other. As the sun dipped low, painting the peaks in the same fiery oranges as the day, everything changed. James squeezed my hand. "Ready to head home?" I smiled, the answer simple and true. "With you? Always." True or false? A single honest confession on a mountain trail can ultimately strengthen the deepest bonds rather than break them.